Today we're working on a 2000 Honda Accord. We're going to be doing the timing belt on it. First thing I want to do on it is make sure that I can get the crankshaft pulley bolt out. We're working on the driver's side. That's where the timing belt is. So first thing I'm going to do is take off this tire, jack up the car, and see if I can get the crankshaft pulley bolt off. You want to do this because if you can't get this bolt off, you're pretty much stuck in the water. There's nothing else you can do. These things have been known to be super tight. I've seen guys that have taken oxyacetylene torches to them. I've heard about guys stripping out the bolts. So that is why I'm going to see if we can get it out first. So first things first is to loosen up these lug nuts, get the wheel off, and jack this thing up. Make sure you have it in park and your emergency brake is on. This is an automatic. If it was a manual, go ahead and put it in. I would usually leave it in reverse with the parking brake on. So let's take off this wheel. Make sure you loosen these up before you jack the car up. If you don't, it puts undue torque on the transmission. So your best bet is to loosen these up before you jack up the tire. Right behind the driver's side wheel, there's a jack point. It's the only place you want to jack up the vehicle. So go ahead and bring your floor jack in, and then bring it up right there. This is specifically made for lifting up the vehicle. So go ahead and jack up the vehicle right there. Your wheel is up off the ground, so go ahead and take all your lug nuts off and then remove the tire. After you've raised the vehicle, gotten the wheel off, crankshaft pulley bolt is right behind here. I'm going to go ahead and put this jack stand in place for safety. Never ever rely just on a floor jack to keep you safe, because if this car comes crashing down, it's not going to be a fun day for you. So always make sure you use a jack stand. And I'll lower the floor jack a little so it sits on the jack stand. And the crankshaft pulley bolt sits right back here. I'm going to go ahead and stick a 19mm socket inside there, see if I can break it loose, see if I can get lucky. I'm suspecting not. I'm leaning towards the side of not breaking loose easily, because they never do, but like I said, maybe I'll get lucky. I have placed a 20-inch half-inch extension with a 19mm half-inch socket, so you guys can see that. So I went ahead, I just stuck the whole assembly right into the splash shield, and I can feel it's grabbed the bolt. This is a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. This engine actually spins counterclockwise, but the crankshaft pulley bolt is normal thread, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I have this 6-ton jack stand that is supporting the extension, and I have a 20mm breaker bar. 20mm. Why do I keep saying 20mm? I think it's a 20-inch, half-inch breaker bar. So let's see if I can get this thing loose. I highly doubt it, but it's worth a shot. And all I'm doing is spin the crank. You gotta use a special tool. Totally forgot about it. What you're looking at is the crankshaft pulley. I know it's hard to see, and the splash shield is in the way. Right back there is the bolt. Let's see if I can get a better shot of it. Right there's the bolt, and around the bolt is a hex-shaped. I want to say there's a hex shape cut into the crankshaft pulley. And what that is for is you have a 50mm tool like this one right here that goes in and holds the crankshaft in place while you turn the crankshaft pulley bolt. So you can pick this up at, I've seen them at Napa, I've seen them at O'Reilly's. I think you can get them from AutoZone too, and I think you can rent them. I actually picked this up from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. But it's a half millimeter. Why do I keep talking in metric today? It's a 1/2 inch hole, so you put a 1/2 inch breaker bar in there, and then you put the breaker bar and you put it into place, lock it down, so you can break the crankshaft pulley bolt loose. Right there you can see Powerbuilt on it, part number 648796. So go ahead and pick one of these up. You're going to need it. I've also seen guys that put a chain wrench around the pulley, but this is very soft metal, so you run the risk of actually breaking this pulley, so I wouldn't recommend that at all. Do it right, or don't do the job at all. Got the shields out of the way, one right there. There's one over here, top right hand corner. I didn't take the bottom off completely, I just took enough bolts off and plastic fasteners to be able to move it out of the way. You can actually move this, take this down and kind of push it out of the way. I don't see the point of removing the whole assembly, just wasting time. Right there's a crankshaft pulley bolt. Right here on the outside, you can see that's where the 50mm tool gets into. So let's get that attached and see if I can break this thing loose. Okay, that seems to be on there pretty good. Bring the 19mm socket into place. Raise up the jack stand. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. What's up?
What you having fun with?
Crankshaft pulley bolt.
Oh. Yeah, I hate those. I hate those with a passion. Make sure those sucker's on there, because I don't want it coming back and snapping me either. Ready?
Yeah, I just hope the tool doesn't. No!
No way.
I'm gonna have to heat it.
Yep.
This was always fun, dude. That was my neighbor, he came by. I was actually able to get the 50mm crankshaft pulley tool to lock into place. It's on a long enough breaker bar that it's actually hitting the ground. And then tried to get the bolt free. We were both pushing on it and nothing. So next thing I'm going to try is chemical warfare. This works for my V6 engine, the Honda J Series V6 engine. Put some penetrating oil. I should have done this. I should have listened to my own advice and done this a couple days ago. I thought about it, but I actually was thinking about you guys, and I wanted to show you that this might actually work, because I wanted to show you how stuck those things can be on. And I was going to try this, give that about 20 minutes to soak in. And if that doesn't work, then I guess I'm going to have to heat this thing up with an oxyacetylene torch and break it loose that way. So let's go from there. Spray some of this stuff on. So go ahead and pull all this stuff off. Now what you want to do is make sure that you get it behind there's a big washer right there, and what you want to do is be able to get it behind the washer and the pulley. So we'll give that about 20 minutes, let that soak in. I didn't wait 20 minutes, I just only waited 10. But I'm going to try it anyways. Need to get this bolt loose, dude. Can't wait around forever for this thing. Let's see if this does it. Oh my goodness. These things are on there so dang tight. It's pretty ridiculous. I don't know why they're on there so tight. It's no bueno, dude. No bueno. I'm putting all my weight on it right now. And it's still not coming off. Oh my goodness. Oh, come on! Come off! I have a little torch, but it doesn't get hot enough. Let's see what happens. Gonna leave it on there for like a minute. I know BriansMobile has a video that shows him doing this exact same thing, but he's got a cool oxyacetylene torch. And I'm just working with this little sissy propane torch. Still the same concept. You're heating up this bolt to try to break the rust free. The only thing I think that's kind of a bummer about this is the fact that the heat is getting soaked into multiple places, whereas when Brian did it, his was in a very specific spot. So no, it's hot. All right, let's see if I can get it loose. Putting the cheater bar on. Did I get it? Yep, I got it. Well, I was about to go out and get an oxyacetylene torch, and I thought I'd try this first. I guess putting heat on there for about a minute, freeing it up, did the job. Oh man, there you go. There's the bad mamma jamma right there. Crankshaft pulley bolt on a Honda. See how big that washer is? And they tighten these down to 181 foot-pounds. Crazy! So there you go. Alright, now the real fun can happen. And once you get this thing off, once you have this crankshaft pulley bolt out, you're 80% there. Honestly, this is the hardest part of the whole job. So if you got this far, congratulations, dude. It's downhill from here. Here's the torch I'm using, so you guys can see that. Just a propane torch. Picked this up at basically, Ace Hardware, home improvement store, Home Depot, Lowe's will have this. So that's what I used. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put the crankshaft pulley bolt back in place, and then go ahead and start working on top. But I wanted to make sure that I was able to get this off first before I took anything else off. I know some guys start taking the valve cover off and the power steering pump off, but I want to take that off first, just so I know that I can get there. Because if you can't get that bolt off, you're not going anywhere. You're dead in the water. You're a fish out of water if you can't get that silly little bolt, if I can point, right there off. So if you can't get that off, don't go any further, because you're not going to be able to do the job. Now we're going to go up top, start taking the valve covers off, take the engine mount off, move the power steering pump out of the way, start having some fun. On this F23, the firing order goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I like to do, I know it's kind of hard to mess this up, but I go ahead and I like to mark it 1, 2, 3, and I'm just putting marks, lines, that's 4. So once again, firing order is 1, 2, 3, 4. I like to use this to keep bolts in place. To get the upper timing cover off, there's a seal, or a lip, I should say, on the valve cover. So you actually have to remove the valve cover to get the upper timing belt cover off, which is kind of a hassle, but that's what they do. So go ahead, start pulling the spark plug boots out. Spark plug wires, I should say. Looking for oil. And then there. And then there. Nothing. Dry, dry, dry. So they're all dry. Clips that hold the spark plug wires in place. So go ahead and get those out of the way. Next will be to loosen all these up. 10 millimeter. After I loosen these up, I'm going to go ahead and pull the spark plugs out as well. This is also a good time if you're doing maintenance, would be to change the spark plugs out and adjust the valves as well. Let's pull the spark plugs. This socket I've found, picked it up from O'Reilly. Right down there, this is a 5/8 spark plug socket. What you see there is a piece of metal, not a piece of metal, it's a magnet, which actually allows the spark plug to go ahead and be caught or captured inside the spark plug socket. So you don't have to go down there and fetch it with a magnet. So I really like this. Like I said, I picked it up from O'Reilly. Well worth it. Well worth it. So as I remove these, I'll go ahead and inspect them too. You can see number 2 is good. No oil on these things at all. This engine is in awesome running shape. Number 1 is good too. So sweet. Awesome running engine. I like that. I like that. That's cool. So go ahead, let's take all these bolts out. 5-10 millimeters. Pull the PCV valve out of the way. There's a hose right here that, oh, this clip isn't even very tight, so work that out of the way too. Okay, all 5 bolts are up. There's nothing in the way. Let's see if I can get this thing up and out. There we go. Doesn't look bad. Too bad the gasket stayed. Pull that up. Looks like there is some RTV in the corners. Some RTV in the corners. So go ahead and pull that up. I'm gonna have to get a new gasket. Just a little bit, just a smidgen, man. Just a smidgen of RTV. Okay, now we're going to go working on the driver's side. Get the power steering pump out of the way. Get the engine out of the way. Get the belts out of the way. So let's start on that. Next thing I'm going to do is unbolt and move out of the way is the power steering pump, which sits right here. Loosen it up. Get this belt off. I'm going to take off these 2 10mm bolts. Get this power steering hose out of the way. Just wrap this in a rag and there's an O-ring there as well. So just be careful you don't lose that. If that's ripped, torn, or damaged in any way, go ahead and replace that O-ring, but it shouldn't be. I'm going to try to leave this line alone, and once this is disconnected, this line and the power steering pump are separated, I should be able to just go ahead and place the power steering pump off to the side over here somewhere. So get your 12 millimeter wobbly, get that in there. Pull that one out. Get those out of the way. So there and there. There and there. I have no idea what I'm talking like that. There and there. This should be a 10 millimeter. This is just holding a bracket on that. It's holding a wiring harness on that goes above the timing belt cover. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. And I think this one is a 12. Yep. There we go. Before I do that, I'm going to loosen these up. Careful. Some power steering fluid will probably leak out when you do this. And like I said earlier, careful, there's an O-ring down there, so don't lose that. Like I said earlier, be careful, there's an O-ring in there. Have a rag handy when you pull this apart, because there should be power steering fluid that comes out of there. Okay, get ready to catch it. Yep, there's an O-ring there, so wrap that up, get that out of the way. Try to elevate it if you can. I don't really see a spot to elevate it so it doesn't leak out. And then finish removing this 12 millimeter bolt. It's a long sucker. Okay, I'm going to slip the belt off. Belt out of the way. And there's a power steering pump. Just place it over to the side. Woohoo! Okay, that is out of the way. Next thing you want to do is you're going to want to remove this motor mount, which sits right here. There's also a grounding cable right there, so don't forget about that. But before you remove this motor mount, you're going to want to take the same jack or another jack if you have one. Use a piece of wood, put it between the jack, the floor jack, and the bottom of the oil pan so that it supports the engine while you remove this motor mount. You don't want to put pressure on it. You just want to hold it in place. You just want to hold the engine in place while you remove this motor mount. So let's do that. Okay, bring the floor jack in. Start raising it up. Needs to be right there. Alright, before I put that all the way up there, I'm going to get a piece of wood. Okay, bring the wood into place. Like I said, you're not putting pressure on this, you're not lifting up the engine. With this jack, you're just putting pressure. You're just putting it there like a resting spot, like a pillow for your head at night. You're just putting pressure on there to keep that engine from falling down when you take off the motor mount. There's 3 bolts, 1 stud. Actually, there's 2 bolts. So that one there, 17, that's a bolt. Right there is 17, which is a nut. You have to have a deep 17 millimeter socket to get that off. Right there's another 17 millimeter nut. Right down here is a 12 millimeter nut. And right there is a 10 millimeter bolt. So this one right here holds it. This one right here, I believe, holds it in place. This one right here is a grounding wire, grounding strap. So make sure you put that back on when you put everything back together again. All these bolts are on there tight. Oh, okay, what's happening? It'll fit on there without the extension in place, but when the extension is in there, it doesn't have enough room to go down, so it's not grabbing, it's just slipping off. Nothing's easy. Nothing is easy. So it is a 17 millimeter. To combat the issue about the socket not being long enough, all you have to do is get a 17 millimeter 1/2 inch deep impact socket. This happens to be a 6-point, but this will allow you to have enough length and clearance when the extension is actually in there. So if you can pick up one of these. I don't know if 3/8 17 deep impact would work, but I know this 1/2 inch 17 millimeter deep did the job, so I should have thought of that right away. So if you guys are running that problem, you can always, I know Lowe's sells these separately, and they're pretty inexpensive, so you can pick these up at Lowe's. I'm not sure exactly the cost, but if you need a 1/2 inch 17 millimeter deep impact, which will be long enough to go over the stud, you can get one of these. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take off this dipstick tube, get that out of the way, wipe that oil off. There's a bolt. Hopefully you guys can see that. There's a bolt right there. Right there. That holds the dipstick tube in. Should be a 10 millimeter. So let's get that off. Get that out of the way. And I'll actually take this off. There you go. Put that aside, and I'll go ahead and put the bolt back into the hole so I don't lose it. Sometimes that's the best place to keep bolts. So you remember to put them in there, and when it's time to put it back together again, you don't forget about it. What I'm going to do is drop this socket all the way down, right? And this tip sits up just a little bit too long. That doesn't allow the extension to sit in there all the way. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put that as far as I can, so you can see right there it's actually not all the way in, but at least it's more grabbing power than it was before, and I'm actually able to turn it. So you might mess up your socket doing this, but at least you get this bolt off. There you go, and you gotta keep working it out there. And silly, huh? Silly. Sure wish I had a Cerveza right now, man. Working in this garage, and it's gotta be, I don't know, I can tell you right now. Hang on. It's 100 degrees in this garage right now. Next thing I'll do is take off this 10 millimeter and this 12. We can get this motor mount out of the way. That out of the way. Come back in here, get this 12 out of the way. Okay. Come back here, get this 17 out of the way. Get this 10 out of the way too. Putting the bolt back in, just the best place to keep them sometimes. So taking that bolt out, silly little guy. Alright, comes right up. What is this for? This bottom part gets tightened up and locks up against, sits like that. So it locks up against this engine mount, this motor mount on the driver's side fender. So it actually sits like that. Crazy! I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but there's a bolt down here, right down there in that corner. There's one right there you gotta remove. And there's got to be a third one somewhere. This wiring harness is part of the power steering pump, so it leads in through here on top of the cover, timing belt cover. So get that out of the way, push that out of the way, tuck it behind the power steering hose. These should be both 10 millimeters. And I might have to get a short socket. Yep, short 10 right here. So go ahead and get that loose. Broke it loose there. Have to use your fingers to get it out the rest of the way. The reason I use hand tools on these videos, and I just dropped it. It's right there. That's what it looks like. What I was saying before I dropped it is the fact that I use hand tools on these jobs because I want anybody to be able to do this. I know some guys are using air compressors and pneumatic tools on these videos, and I want to go ahead and use standard tools that are available to everybody, whether you have electricity or not, whether you're here in the United States of America. If you have simple hand tools, you can actually get these jobs done, except for some special tools that you need, like the 50mm crankshaft pulley tool, but I've seen guys online make those as well with some plumbing supplies, so that's pretty ingenious as well. Right now I'm just taking this lower bolt off, trying to see it blindly, but that's not working. I don't know if somebody stripped this out or what, because this thing is not coming. Looks like it's cracked, dude. I know it's kind of hard to see, but right there you can see that the metal right there appears to be cracked. And right there's a sleeve, it almost looks like, that is coming out of the block. So it looks like that screw pulled the sleeve out, and that sleeve was supposed to be in the block, but the block is cracked. So I'm trying to fish that out. Kind of a bummer, man. How do you even crack something like that? It's a 10mm bolt, so you're not putting tons of pressure on it or anything, but that's crazy. So let's see if I can get that out. I'm going to use a screwdriver and see if I can pry that thing open. So I'm sticking the screwdriver down here. It's loose. There we go. So there you go, you can see it right there. What is going on? Yeah, there's a broken piece of plastic right there. Right there. That came out. What you're looking at right now is a cam, top cam. Right there is the word up. So you have to line that up. So that'll be like directly right there where that one is. And then there should be two other marks, if I can see them, on the teeth. One is right there, and the other one should be right there. Hopefully you guys can see that. So there's two little marks right there, that tells you exactly when the number one cylinder is top dead center. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it so it's easier to see. So there's up. There's one mark there. The other mark is right there. Okay. Right there. Right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the crankshaft. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise to line this sucker up, to line this cam up, and then double check on the crank to make sure that that's lined up as well. So you want to line this up before you go any further, before you take off any of the belts, any of the tensioners, springs, anything like that. So go ahead, let's line this bad boy up. Okay, that's lined up there. That's pointing up. Mark on this side is to the side. This mark over here is also to the side. So I'm checking the mark on the bottom. Okay, looks like it's lined up on the top and the bottom. You should also be able to see it from the back side as well. Yep, looks good up there too on the back side. So this mark here is also on the back side of the cam as well. Lines up with the plastic cover, so you'll be able to see that too. On the bottom there, see that silver mark that I made? That's actually lining up with the pointer that's on this cover. That should be pointing, that mark should be lined up with the pointer. Right there, you can see it if you look down. So yeah, it's lined up. You can see that if you look down, there's a, starting from the mark on the camshaft pulley, silver mark, you work your way up, you see that line, and then there's like a two prongs, I want to say, almost like a gun sight. You look all the way down there from the top and you should be able to see it lined up with the silver mark. There's also 3 marks to the left counterclockwise of the silver mark, and that's used for timing the engine. So don't get that confused with the single mark by itself to the far right or clockwise of the other 3 marks. So as long as you have the top cam lined up, this bottom crank lined up, you should be good to go. Now just note that I'm going to pull this bolt off, and it's tight. It's not as tight as when I started, but the cam might move a little bit when you pull this off. So before you remove the pulley, make sure you line it back up again without the bolt in the way. And the way you're going to move the crank with the bolt out is just use your 50mm tool to line everything back up again. So I'm going to go ahead, take the bolt out, and then line it back up, double check it, and we'll start taking everything else apart. Alright, let's see if I can get lucky and take this off. I'm going to try holding the crankshaft with my hand. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Actually, I'll try to give it one quick whack and see if it'll come off without moving the pulley. Oh yeah, look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Didn't even move the crankshaft pulley. I just whacked the end of the 1/2-inch ratchet I was using. Alright, cool man, cool. Alright, that's out, cool. Alright, awesome. Double check my marks. Alright, it's lined up here too, so awesome. That was cool. Just gave it a quick whack on the backside, came off. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to loosen up the alternator. To loosen up the alternator, you have to remove or loosen up this bolt that runs the length of the alternator. This is a 14mm. I'm using a long 0 offset wrench to actually get this thing off. Now that that's loose, there's actually a bolt there, and that's the adjuster nut for the alternator. So go ahead. I don't know if you tighten it or you loosen it to move the alternator, but we'll find out right now. So this is a 10mm. Man, it's still super tight. Is there something I'm missing here? Looks like there's a bolt on the back side that I need to loosen up, possibly to be able to get this thing loose. So let me try that real quick. Probably be a 12 millimeter. They don't make it easy, do they? They don't make it easy. Yep, looks like it's 12 millimeter. So I get my wrench down there now that it's locked on the side. Okay, I'll put the ratchet on this time. See if I can guide it in. Maybe that way I'll get some room. Okay, it's on there. See if I can break it loose. Come over on this side. Alright, it's loose. Let's see if my... Why is the alternator not moving at all, dude? So it's a little bit hard to see, but right down here on this side, right where I'm putting this wrench, there's another bolt, a 12 millimeter bolt that you have to loosen up to actually get the alternator to move around. So I had to loosen up this one. There's one on the back side below here. There's one right here, and then on the side of where this bolt is, there's one 12 millimeter right here, and you just have to loosen that up and actually got the belt loose. So I can finally get the belt loose. Looks like it goes around, it's pretty simple actually. It goes around the alternator, working down past the AC compressor, and then back around the crank. So pretty simple to get that thing on and off. So let's see if I can loosen that up a little bit more. There we go. So you have to loosen this one almost all the way out. Let's see, which way did I have to loosen it? Counterclockwise. Lefty loosey. Okay, that belt's off. Should replace it. Should replace it. Looks a little cracked, just like the other one. Okay, right down there, there's like a gun sight. Okay, I'm going to zoom in, and you can be able to see. Come on, little thing. Okay, see? You can see those tabs that I was talking about. And the silver mark is lined up perfectly right now with the tab. So that gun sight is lined up with the silver mark, and to the left of that, you'll see the 3 marks on the cam, on the crank, that I was talking about. So that's how you need to line it up. And it's still lined up on the cam up on top, so everything's good to go. So I'm going to pull off the pulley, start replacing the components, do the water pump, and go from there. But I just want you guys to see exactly how that looks. Let me try and get closer. So there, perfectly lined up. So there you guys go, there's a shot of it. Let's start getting down to the nitty gritty. Crankshaft pulley right there. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. You should be able to pull this off by hand. No big deal. Double check your alignment mark. Right there. Mine's lined up on top and bottom, so let's go ahead and pull this off. Just came right off. Right there, there's a rubber seal. There's also a harmonic balancer too, so if that seal's broken, cracked, or coming apart somehow, you're going to want to go ahead and replace that, but that is rubber in there, so just make note. Next thing we'll do is take off the bolts for the lower cover. There's one right there, one right there, one right there. One up here somewhere. I gotta check it out. So let's go ahead and take those off right now. 10 millimeter. All 3 are 10 millimeter. Break those loose. There's one up here in the right hand corner. Could be another one somewhere on the left hand corner too, so. Okay, it's in the top right hand corner. Looks like there's two more. Both 10mm again. So I'm getting deep. Okay, that one's out. Fifth one. Got this wiring harness to contend with, so get that out of the way. Pop that out. Looks like there's some kind of clip in there. So pull that out. Oh man, it's already broken. Okay, so I'm just pulling the cover straight down. Kind of work it out. Hopefully, maybe. Okay, see this little part right here? Try to push that back in. There's the dust and crud out of the way. Try to put that back in before you put it, but as you can see, right here, there's a lower cover. There's one here, top right, top left, and 3 on the bottom. So just make note, there's five 10mm bolts on the bottom cover. Okay, here we go to the meat and potatoes. The meat and potatoes. So hopefully you guys can see this. Right up there is your water pump. This is your balancer shaft. Your balancer pulley, I should say. I believe this is your oil pump. This is your crank. I'm not sure what that one is. These are your pulleys. There's a mark here on your oil pump. There should be a mark on the backside. And then right back here, this hole, you should be able to stick a screwdriver in here and lock that into place as well. So, spring right here. Should be 2 springs. Don't lose this key. There's a key right there. Don't lose that. Let's take a look at the top. You're going to have to get the engine mount out of the way as well. Make sure everything's lined up still, and then we can take the belts off. Next thing that we're going to need to do is remove the motor mount, which is right here. And another thing I like to do, this mark right here, the timing belt is lined up right now. So I'm going to make a mark right here along the timing belt, and on the other side as well. And then when I take this belt off, I can cut the teeth in between the two and mark the new one as well. So it's just another added level of safety and precaution, but that's what I like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this right now. So it goes right here. You can use whiteout, whatever is convenient. So that's actually sitting on a valley. I'll try to get to the other side too. This actually moved a little bit. See if I can get it back into place. Double check the back side. Nope, a little bit too far on that side, so we'll bring it back around. You'll be able to see on the back side there's a cover still in there, and the two timing marks should be lined up with the plastic which they are right now. So cool. Okay, just double check that before you start undoing stuff, because that's when you get into trouble. You want to make sure these are lined up. Mark this here on the back. See if I can get a shot of that. I'll mark this one too. Okay, that's marked. I'll mark it on this side. What you're looking at is the oil pump. Right there, there's a little indentation, and right there's another one. I'm marking. Those need to be lined up as well. That one's lined up on the cam. It's marked there. And right there on the back side, that needs to be lined up too. So, just so you know, right there. So, just make sure all that's lined up before you start taking stuff off. Next thing we'll do is go ahead and take off this engine mount. What you're looking at is the motor mount on the engine side. There's 3 14mm bolts that hold this thing in place. So go ahead, let's take those off now. Those two are loose. I'll try going from the bottom to get this last one. So it's easier to get these things from the bottom than the top, just so you know. You need a 14 long 3/8 socket, as well as a short one. So I'll check and make sure they're all loose right now. So I'm going up on top to get the last one. I have a shorter 3/8 ratchet here, so try to work it out that way. Once I have this off, I'm going to show you how the bolts line up. They're not all the same size, the same length. They're 14mm, but they're not all the same length. There it is. There's the engine bracket, engine mounting bracket, completely taken off. Almost lost it. So just so you can see the bolt lengths. There's one here, like that, in the very bottom. Top right hand corner. Looks like that. Top left hand corner. Looks like that as well. So are these two the same? Top two are the same. So the top two are longer, the bottom one's shortest. So there you go. Keep that in mind when you put it back together. Now that we have the engine side motor mount out of the way, we're going to loosen up the adjusting nut right here. That is the adjusting nut. That's going to loosen up the bouncer shaft pulley, which is the outermost one, and also loosen up the timing belt pulley as well. So once we loosen up those, we'll take the tension off the belts, and we'll be able to go ahead and get those off and then replace the water pump. Double check your marks before you go ahead and do this. So I'm double checking on the back side here. Good there. Good there. Check my oil pump. It's good down there, lined up there. Okay. See if we can get this thing loose without moving the belt too much. It's a 17mm. Using my 0 offset long wrench. Actually, it's a 14. These on there pretty tight. Okay, that's loose. Double check that by hand. Yep, that's loose. So the adjusting nut's loosened up. It's a 14 millimeter. This pulley right here, the closest one to you, to the adjuster nut, is a timing balancer belt tensioner, and this one's your timing belt tensioner. So we'll see if we can move this one up, that one down. Okay, get the timing tensioner belt off. What I did there is I just slid off the timing belt crankshaft cam. Just slid that off. Right there what I did is I pulled this pulley off. It's part of the balancer belt. It's sits on the crankshaft pulley. So it looks like that. Just pulled that off. And then also right here, right there, there's a mark for the bouncer shaft. So make sure that's pointing down when you put everything back together. There's your oil pump up there. Right there. So go ahead, I'm going to pull this belt off. The mark for the crank is right here. There's an arrow that sits right there. There's an arrow that sits right there. Right now they're facing each other. That's good. So I'm going to go ahead and mark a spot on this belt as well down here so I can line it up again. That's just an insurance policy that I do. So since it's easiest to get over on this side, I'll mark it over here somewhere. Next thing to do will be to take the timing belt off. I marked down on the crank and up on the cam. So as you can see right there, left hand corner, it's marked. And mark the top as well. So let's take the timing belt off. So the spring back there, let's go ahead and take that off. Sits right there. Bottom part comes in from the back side towards the fender. Top comes in from the back towards the front, the loop. So just remember that when you put it back in. Not very much tension on this thing at all. Hang that out of the side. Now let's go ahead and take the adjuster nut off. And then there's a washer here too, so be careful, don't lose that. Got the adjuster nut off and the washer. So there's those two, don't lose that. Check timing, timing's still good. Looks like there's a 10 millimeter bolt down there holding that thing on. It's actually the timing belt balancer pulley. So break that loose. Man, I love these zero offset wrenches. So I'll get that from the bottom. Okay, don't lose that. Let's see if we can get this. There we go. There's one of them. Ah, okay, so there. Fits in like that. There's a 10 millimeter bolt goes, and that's where that spring hooks into right back here. So that's how the tensioner sits in. Another coil bearing, man. This is Honda stock factory parts right here. Coil bearings, made in Japan. It's a beautiful thing. Doesn't sound bad at all, really. a little bit of wear, but this thing could have kept on going. So next, let's take the belt off. Do that from the bottom. Sliding off the water pump first. When I took the timing belt off, there was this spring holding up on this the timing belt tensioner pulley. It hooked into here. On the back side here, there's a this plate. This part right here, there's I want to say rivet or a nipple on the engine block that actually has to go back into, and then this actually gets plugged back into this right here, and goes onto a stud as well on top. So just make sure you don't forget that either. So see what this thing sounds like. Feels okay. One thing I noticed is you can tell the two springs apart is this one actually has like a cover over the coils. So just make note of that. Pull the timing belt out, count the teeth, and then move the marks over. In this engine, there are two basic places for coolant to be trapped. One would be the radiator, the other one is in the engine block. So I know there are people that say empty the radiator to drain the coolant out, and then open up the water pump. But the real reason to drain the radiator and to drain the block is if you're going to do a full coolant flush. It's a good idea. It's actually a great idea to do it at this time when you have everything open. I'm actually not going to do it this time. So I am just going to open up the water pump and let whatever coolant is in there drain out. Make sure you have a catch pan at the bottom because it's going to make a big old mess. But basically, you can either open this up, drain the coolant out, or if you're doing a full coolant flush, which I highly recommend, is to go ahead and drain the radiator as well. But that's not going to happen. There's 5 10mm bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. One is right there, which has a post on it, which actually is used for the spring, and then one on the very back side, which you can't see. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. I'm going to have to come up here from the bottom. As you start loosening these up, you'll start getting coolant coming out, so don't be worried. Another thing you'll want to check for is after you get this thing off, is to make sure that the O-ring, the rubber O-ring, is free and clear from the engine block. Just remember where this one goes, it holds the spring on, so just be careful when you put it back in. Make sure you put it back in the right place. Start removing all the bolts. I'll try by hand. If not, I'll get a piece of wood and then smack it with a hammer. Yeah, I'm going to get a piece of wood. Make sure all the bolts are out. Yep, they're out. So you can do this the brutal way, you can do this the fast and nasty way. I should say you can do this the brutal and fast and nasty way. You can do this the tame and easy way. If you tap this a little bit, break it loose, it'll drizzle out. Controlled burst, controlled flow. Or you can just whack it off and have a big old mess. So it's really up to you. Come out here on the edge. Slow controlled flow. So without getting off the rest of the way. Some more might spill out. And we get lucky. So it really wasn't all that bad. Check it out. Honda water pump. Honda markings right there. What does it say? Y-O-T-E-O? Yoteo? Yoteo. Looks like Toyota, but different. One thing I did notice on the new pump is this rubber seal. I almost pulled it off, but decided not to. So it is part of the old water pump. So another thing you can tell is that when they installed this pump, they didn't use any RTV on it. They didn't goop it up. So you should do the same thing. Just put the seal in. These little divots right here, these aluminum divots that run along the edge, keep the O-ring in place. So there you go. There's a factory Honda water pump. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's a masterpiece right there. Masterpiece. One thing you can see down there, sorry it's a little bit hard to see, but there's the opening for the water pump. And one thing you want to do, I can see down there, it looks very nice and clean. But you want to go ahead, stupid train. You want to go ahead and take your finger, just rub along the edge where the O-ring was sitting. Be very, very careful when you do this. When you do this, it is aluminum. It's basically a sharpened razor blade down there, so be very careful when you put your finger. I don't say just like run it there real quick. You know, go in there, feel around, make sure there's none of the old gasket that's left on. From the old water pump, the one I just pulled off, the O-ring was complete and intact, so I highly doubt it that there's any old O-ring residue left there, but I'll go ahead and feel it anyways. The edges are very sharp, so be careful, like I said. Yeah, there's nothing there. Nothing. So next thing I'm going to do, get a rag, go ahead and clean up that little bit of coolant down there. Wipe along the side where I just felt for O-ring, and we'll put the new water pump. This is the beginning of putting it all back together again. So go ahead and clean that out. Get any spilled residue. Go ahead, run the rag along there. See if we can get any. Try to dry this off as well as possible. Get any foreign material, any dirt debris out of there, so it's nice and clean. Clean mating surface when you put the new water pump in. Here's a new one. Make sure the O-ring's in place. Go ahead and slide it down there. Kind of doing this blind I should say. Can't see what I'm doing from this angle. Well, I guess I had that wiring harness in the way. Silly me. Okay, starting to put bolts back into place. You might have to move around the water pump a little bit to get to actually bite. I like to start one side and then start the other. Opposite of that, so that you know that it's going in correctly. What I had to do right there is move the water pump a little bit, get it started. Let's get another bolt started on the other side. Make sure you put this one in the right place. And just tighten these by hand. Torque spec is like 8.5 foot-pounds. I'm going to run it down to 10. That's the lowest denominator my torque wrench goes to. Let's go ahead and start tightening these down by hand a little bit. Just going to snug them up. Kind of going a star pattern. Okay, and then get this top one right here. I have a torque wrench set here to 10 pounds, so I'm going to set them down. It calls for like 8.5, I believe. But this is the smallest increment I can get, so 10 pounds really isn't that much. 10. Go down here, do this one. Actually, I should go to the other side and do it. I can't torque the stud that holds the spring on because there's not enough room. So I'm going to have to do that one by hand. £10 isn't very much, like I was saying. It's more of a feel. So if you can't get it, if you don't have a torque wrench, just snug them up. You don't have to be Superman when you do it. Just make sure that you go pretty even all the way around to get them tight. Okay, that's probably about 10 pounds. Okay, the new water pump is on. Torque down to 10 foot-pounds. Next thing we'll do will be to bring on the new pulleys and check alignment marks and start putting this bad boy together again. Adjusting bolt there, right here. This one. So we have the water pump, new water pump on and torqued down to spec. 5 bolts, 5 10mm bolts, torqued down to 10 foot-pounds. And next I'm going to go ahead and put the tensioners on and put the springs back on as well. And then put the belts back on, start putting everything back together again. One thing you need to be aware of is when you put this pulley back on, right there is a little pin or nipple or nub, and the new pulley actually has a place for it right there. So you just want to make sure that you get that into place and on that tab when you put this pulley back into place. Okay, then right here later on when we tension up the timing belt, this right here, this hole, we'll use one of the covers, one of the bolts from the covers. Put this bolt will be used right here and locked down into place to lock the timing belt and set tension on there. So just note that as well. So I'll go ahead and bring this on. Double check on that side. So you can't see it, but yes, it is on. Bring in the new pulley. Don't forget your hold down. Which is right there. We'll bring in the 10mm screw bolt. So I'll go ahead and put that into place. That holds everything together. Just had to move that around to get that fully seated. Okay. Go ahead, I'm going to tighten this up. I'm not going to torque it down or anything. I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit. Give a little bit of feedback. See if that's... yep. Wow, I guess I could tighten that up all the way. Okay, that's tight. Tensioner still moves freely. Check the one in the back. There you go. That moves freely. Now I'm going to put the spring back on. Okay, we'll put the springs back on. We're going to put the one for the balancer shaft pulley first. Balancer shaft tensioner. Put that one first. That one's the one closest to the firewall. So we'll put that spring on. then this spring for the timing belt tensioner. Just note that this one has the sleeve over the coils, so put that into place right now. Looks like I might have to take this pulley apart first, what I just did, and put this spring on first, because it doesn't seem to be a way to get it to line up. Unless I really put some force on this and possibly bend the spring. So I have to redo my work here real quick. Put the spring on. Okay, I just want to show you there's two hooks on here. So little hook, big hook. The little hook goes into the tensioner. It goes in with the pointy part towards the engine block, because you don't want it like this facing out and could get caught on the belt and rip the belt apart. So put the pointy end of the spring, the small part of the spring down. This goes in the hook part, so you want this in like that, and then facing up. So small hook down, facing inward towards the engine block. I'm just going to open up the spring just a little bit. Okay, open it just a little bit. Not much of a difference there. Just a tad, so I can get this thing to start. There. And then over this hook on top. Oh man. So go like this. Hopefully I can do this by hand. I don't need a pair of needle nose pliers, so get that in there. Oh. Alright, let me grab some needle nose and do it that way. These are my X pliers that I got from Sears. These things are awesome. Okay, cool. Woohoo! Alright, good deal. See if that's operating correctly. Yep. Okay, next you bring in your washer, the adjuster nut, put that in place. And then bring in the nut itself. So go ahead and start that. Okay, let's see. You'll want this back tensioner, the timing belt tensioner, to be all the way down to put on the belt. So this one right here, you're gonna want that all the way down. And like what I was saying before earlier, this guide right here in this hole is made for putting a timing belt cover bolt in. So I want to bring this down, start the bolt, and lock it into place so I can keep that down while I put on the belts. I think I'm going to have to do it from the top. What I'm doing is I'm getting a large flat-headed screwdriver. I'm going to push down right near the spring instead of on the pulley itself. And come down here and lock this into place. Okay, that pulley's all the way adjusted down. The crank right here, that's still lined up. You can see my mark right there. It's marked here on the block. So that's lined up. So that pulley is all the way down. So let's see if we can get the timing belt on. One thing I wanted to show you here, and this is the old belt, here's the new one. I went ahead and I marked the old belt. I marked the old belt before I took it off the camshaft and the crank, as you guys saw earlier. So I marked the two spots on the cam and then that mark on the crank. And then what I did, then I took the new one and I transferred the new one over as well. So that's just what I do. That's my insurance policy to make sure that I have everything lined up. This is the new one. So I marked the crank and the two marks on the cams. I also counted the teeth on each belt just to make sure that everything was in sync. It was 112 teeth on both belts. reason I did that, I've also heard horror stories of guys getting the wrong belts and one too many teeth or one few tooth teeth. However you say that. Not enough teeth. Then you run into all kinds of problems. So I'll line this up on the cam, and then right down here is the crank mark. So that's just an added level of security I do. To put the water pump on, it says to go around the drive pulley, tensioner pulley, the water pump pulley, and then the cam pulley. So it'll go counterclockwise. This will be your drive pulley right here. Right here is your tensioner pulley. Up there we did the water pump, and then over the cam. So that's how they want us to do it. So line that up here. Let's see, where's my mark? My mark is right there. So it's in a valley. Okay. Here comes the fun part. Slide that on. Okay, that looks good right there. Come up on top. Get the tensioner. Go around the water pump. Get some place there. Then I'm trying to work it up over the cam. And I'm just trying to slide it on. Kind of coming at an angle. Here, let me give you a shot of that. Okay, it's lined up on this side. I'm just trying to work it. Careful when you do this because you rip up your fingers on this cam. Alright, cool. Let's see if my marks are lining up. Yep. Everything's on. It's on the water pump. It's on the tensioner. It's around the drive pulley. Let me double check my mark down there, make sure it's lined up. Hopefully it is. Center that. Yep, and it's lined up down there as well. Let's take a look. Right here. That's where I marked it when I originally took it off. And it's still lined up. Let's see if it's lined up on top. Yep. It's all lined up, dude. Awesome, 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 awesome. That was probably the second hardest part of the whole job is putting the time belt back on. So next time I'm going to make sure that it's all flush and not going to hit anything. Push that on. Okay. It's on the water pump. It's on the tensioner. It's over the cam. It's lining up there. It's lining up over here. There's the mark, silver paint mark. There's the other mark. So the next thing will be to set tension on it. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take out the bolt that I put in to hold the timing belt adjuster. Take that bolt out right there. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see. That one right there. I put that in place to hold the tensioner down. So I get the pulley, so I get the timing belt on. And you don't want to leave that in there anyways, because you need the pulley to be able to move. And it's one of the bolts used for the cover, so let's go ahead and take that out. Okay, next in the instructions it says to rotate the camshaft. It says to rotate the crankshaft pulley 5 to 6 turns counterclockwise to seat the timing belt on the pulleys. Well, I did that by double checking to make sure that it's all seated here correctly. It's seated here on the tensioner, it's seated on the water pump and on the cam. So I'm not going to rotate it 6 to 7 times. Then it says install the balancer belt drive pulley in the lower cover. Temporarily install the crankshaft pulley and bolt. Rotate the crankshaft pulley 5 to 6 turns counterclockwise to seat the timing belt on the pulleys. To adjust the belt tension, loosen the adjusting nut. Loosen the adjusting nut, which is right here. Okay. Rotate the crankshaft counterclockwise 3 teeth on the camshaft pulley. Tighten the adjusting nut to 33 foot-pounds. Okay, so that's loose. The tensioner moved up a little bit. I'm going to take my 0 offset 14 millimeter wrench and turn the camshaft up on top 3 teeth counterclockwise and see what happens. So I'm up here on top counterclockwise. Three teeth. There we go. And that's the right tension right there. And it says to install. So that's the right tension right there. As you can see, I'm moving it. It's putting tension on the tensioner. Now I'm going to use that same bolt I had. Plug that back in. So it holds that tensioner in place. And then I can adjust the tension on the tensioner for the balancer timing belt. So it's not as complicated as it sounds. Pretty easy. Rotate that counterclockwise, sets tension on the tensioner, lock that down like I did prior just to get the timing belt on, and then we'll go to the balancer timing belt tensioner to put the right tension on that. So go ahead, have that ready. Okay, timing belt tensioner is set. Now it says to torque down the adjusting nut to 33 foot-pounds. Torque wrenches to 33 foot-pounds. Find my 14 millimeter socket. Okay, it's supporting it. Let's see if I can get in there this way. I highly doubt it. Oh man. But I can't get in there. Oh man. Tighten it up by hand. I'm not going to do it super tight. Get it down there. Snug up. Okay. Next. So that bolt that we're putting through the timing belt tensioner is actually called the timing belt adjuster arm. And this balancer shaft right here is moving around. You can see that it wants to go where it wants to go. This is where it was pretty much pointing when I took it off. On the back side here, what you're looking at is the back bolt, the balancer shaft bolt. That's where you put in the bolt or screwdriver or long piece of metal to stop the balancer shaft from moving. It's right there. Just so you know, I want you guys to be able to see that. It's on the back side of the engine, facing the firewall. So you got to take that off, put something in to hold it, and then make sure you put the bolt back in, or oil will leak out of there before you start running everything. So just so you guys know, it's right there. If you got this all the way out of alignment, basically what would happen is you would feel a a shake or vibration in the engine at a specific RPM. So put the, and then make sure that the oval mark on top of the oil pump right here is also lined up. Twelve millimeter bolt. Okay, there it is. Oh, there's oil in there. Whoops-a-daisy. So just make sure you put this back in. There's a washer that I just lost. There's the washer. There's a bolt. So make sure you put that back into place. 12 millimeters. See if I can lock this thing into place now. There you go. There, it's locked. Whoa. Alright, I used a screwdriver, stuck that back there. Now now that's locked into place. Alright, next thing I'll do is make sure that this is lined up. Then I'll bring the pulley back on right here. I'm going to put this all on as one, so just so you know, make sure you don't lose your key right here. Very important. If you lose that, you're going to spin your engine out. You don't need to mark this belt like you did the timing belt. The only reason I did that was to make sure that I was lined up on everything, on the 3 different components that I needed. On this belt, it's not as crucial or essential, so it's a balancer shaft. This is your oil pump. So oil pump, go underneath your tensioner. I'm gonna have to loosen that up and put that all the way up. It's one thing I didn't do. So I'm loosening this up just so that I can move the tensioner all the way up. Remember, your timing belt tensioner still has the bolt in it, so it's not going anywhere. Alright, so let's see, push down on that. Pushing on the lever. And locking that into place. Tighten it down a little bit so it doesn't move on you. The adjuster nut's tight. Now let's see about getting that belt on. So double check this. That's in place. That's locked. Okay, now bring this down underneath the tensioner. It's on the oil pump. Tensioner, we'll bring it around here. Under the balancer shaft. We'll see about getting the pulley into place. Actually, I just noticed that I didn't move the timing marks back when I put the tensioner on the timing belt tensioner, so I'm going to put that back into place real quick. Just to be safe, I come this far, why not just go that extra mile putting everything correct? Double check it on the back side. Make sure everything's lined up. The 2 cams are lined up still. It's dead on right there, so cool. Alright, let's see about getting this belt on. So over the oil pump, underneath the tensioner, over the balancer shaft, and then bring on the pulley. And this just gets pushed on. And it looks like it's tooth off or something. And that gets pushed on while you're putting the balancer shaft pulley. So you put the belt on at the same time you put this pulley on. So that's how you work that. Okay. Make sure it's on there. Move that. Okay, that's good. Check up on top. Or actually, I can feel it right here. Push this belt all the way towards you, so it's up against this rim, this flange, and make sure it's under there. Alright, cool, awesome. Push this all the way on, that's on. Take out your screwdriver here in the back, so you're freeing up the balancer shaft. Before I forget, let's install the bolt and the washer. Make sure the washer's on there. There is oil coming out of there, so you'll have a pretty big leak if you forget to install this thing. Kind of sight unseen here. Just work it in by your hand. Alright, that's in. Now come in and tighten it down. And then we'll set tension on it. And that is how you do a timing belt on a 2.3 liter Honda. The one thing that I do like about the V6 is rather than these engines is the fact that their tensioner automatically sets. You don't have to do it manually like an old alternator. Okay, cool. So that plugs in the back. Tighten that bolt and that washer, and now we'll set timing, or set the tensioner. To adjust the balancer belt, temporarily reinstall the crankshaft pulley. Loosen the adjusting nut 2/3 to 1 turn. Turn the crankshaft pulley 1 turn counterclockwise, and tighten the adjusting nut. Remove the 6mm bolt from the timing belt adjuster arm. Check the lower cover rubber seal for cracks and other damage. Okay, so I guess we'll loosen the adjusting nut. And then I'm going to rotate the engine from the cam. Turn the crankshaft pulley 1 turn counterclockwise, then tighten the adjusting nut. Okay, so loosen this up. Counterclockwise 1 turn. Okay. So you loosen this up. We'll rotate the engine counterclockwise from the cam, 1 turn. Alright, there's 1 turn. So then I'll tighten this up. If I could, I would adjust this down to 33 foot-pounds, but my torque wrench does not fit in there. I'll do this manually. Once this is adjusted, you don't want to open this back up. This is final adjustment. Okay. Okay, now loosen the bolt that's holding the timing belt tensioner in place. And everything should be set. Just so you know, there's not a whole lot of tension. Actually, it doesn't feel good at all. What I'm going to do, I'm going to loosen that up again. I'm going to do it by hand, like an old alternator. Can I get there from here? I'm loosening this up. I'll put a little bit more tension on it than what this called for. That is way loose. I can put more tension out with my hand than what happened here. So I'll pull that down just a little bit. Get that tension set. Just pull it down with my hand so the belt doesn't seem sloppy and a lot of play. If you guys can, pick yourself up a set of these zero offset wrenches, man. They are a lifesaver to work on these Hondas. A lifesaver. I was about to buy the whole set, but that was like $100, and the only ones that I really use are the 10, 12, 14, 17 millimeters. Okay, as you can see there, a little bit more tension on there. Feel a little bit more comfortable about that. Okay, so double check this. Righty tighty, lefty loosey on this one. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to release the, remove that bolt, that cover bolt that I put in to keep the timing belt tensioner in place. So let's take that bolt out. Alright, cool, that's out. So I'm going to actually rotate the engine until I bring my timing marks back up just to double check everything so I feel confident about it. And then I'll start putting everything back together. I don't know how many times I spun it, maybe 12, 15 times. But there you go, you can see right there it's lined up, and on the back side it's lined up as well. So I'm pretty confident I got this dialed in. As far as slack on the belt, I did exactly what Honda told me to do. It just feels like there's, if I did what they wanted me to do, then see, you can see there, but I'm gonna leave it so everything lined up fine. If I was off a tooth, I would be very worried. I would actually do it over again, but everything seems to be lining up. So now here comes the fun part, putting everything back together. Getting the crankshaft pulley bolt off is the hardest part. Putting the timing belt on will be the second. Make sure everything in timing would be the third hardest part. So once you get this, you're home free. So let's start putting everything back together again. Next thing we'll do, we'll go ahead and put the engine mount back in right here. Just make sure you put the short one on the bottom, two long ones on top. So let's put that back in place. Put a little bit of oil on the threads before we put these in. There's that one. And I'll do the other two before, and I'll oil up the other two before I put them in. So I'm going to start it, run it down just a little bit. Doing the bottom one first, then doing the top two. Put a little oil on those threads. Okay, those are all started. Start those by hand. Right at the top of the screen you can see the bottom bolt. It's right here. And there's two right up here as well, so I'm going to just run these down with my fingers. Come back in with the 14 millimeter socket and tighten them all down. So let's go ahead, let's tighten these up. So here's the motor mount. 3 bolts down there. All 3 of these are 14 millimeter. And the back one's tight too. Okay, now we'll put the cover back on. The lower cover. Bouncer shaft belt looks good. So let's go back down and I'll show you how to put the, not show you, I've already showed you, there's 5 bolts. But we'll go ahead and put the lower timing cover on. Okay, we'll bring the timing cover back on. Pull it out from the bottom. Bring that back up. Make sure it goes over the adjusting nut. Once we get that back into place, we'll start all 5 bolts and then go from there. So bring that up. Make sure your key's in. Okay, cool. So start all 5 bolts. They look like that. Let me get the other one on the other side. And we'll start tightening all those up. 10 millimeter. There's a little foam gasket on the inside. If that starts falling off or peeling off, try to put it back into place. If it won't stay in place, you can either use some spray adhesive, or you can buy spray adhesive at any craft store, hardware stores, Ace, Home Depot, Lowe's will have it, or you can use super glue. Keep the seal in place. All 5 bolts are back in place for the lower cover. While we're down here, we're going to go ahead and install the crankshaft pulley. Make sure that's seated right. Get this wiring harness all adjusted. Everything looks good on that side. Okay, now let's bring in the pulley. Only goes one way. Make sure the key is there. There's a notch in the pulley. Okay. Next thing we'll do, put some oil on the threads on the crankshaft bolt. If anyone is wondering, I'm using Mobil 1 oil. Okay, it's all oiled up. Go ahead and stick that in. Run that down, and then we're going to get the crankshaft pulley tool. I'm going to torque this thing down to 181 pounds. The recommended torque from Honda for this bolt. Alright, that's in. Alright, bring that into place. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey on the crankshaft pulley bolt. Also on the engine turns counterclockwise. So remember that, counterclockwise on the engine, standard thread on the crankshaft pulley bolt, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. This is actually going opposite of engine rotation, so I have to bring it over here and lock it in this way. So I had to turn the cam to get the crankshaft pulley to line up. Okay, looks like it might be lining up now. 181 foot-pounds. Double check it. 181 foot-pounds. The reason I like to do it on these engines is the fact that the engine itself and all this spins counterclockwise, so it's actually in the same direction as the bolt needs to turn for the bolt to loosen up by itself. So that's why I like to do that. On the Honda V6s, the J series, I typically don't. I'll just tighten it by hand, and the rotation is the same as tightening it, so you run less risk of having the crankshaft pulley bolt come out. But this engine, I'll go ahead and torque that down. So next thing we're going to do is go up top and put the upper cover on, engine mount back on, the valve cover back on, put the spark plugs back in, and fire this bad boy up. So wiggle this thing on. Make sure your wiring harnesses are out of the way. And then see if it's sitting correctly down here on this side. Guess I should look at it and see if it slides in or sits on top. Kind of looks like it sits on top. So bring that back down. Okay, so let's bring that bolt in, which sits right here. Alright, that's tight. Okay, next let's put on the engine mount. Here's the engine mount. At this point you want to inspect it, make sure there's no cracks, no rubber's falling apart on it. If it needs replacing, this is the time to do it. Right now when you have it out. This one looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it. Put it back down here in its place. I'm going to put some oil on this thread right here for safe measure. It actually goes right here, so start that by hand. Start it by hand and then bring in the other 2 bolts before you tighten anything down. That way you have room to wiggle it around if need be. Got that one started. Got that one started. 14 millimeters, so let's go ahead and run those down. Okay, the engine mount is back in. Now we're going to put the bridge that goes from the engine to the engine mount. So we moved the engine up and down. So you might have to adjust the engine either up or down to actually complete this. So the jack is still under there. So just know that you might have to move the jack. Or, yeah, move the jack to move the engine to get the bracket on. So let's go ahead and do that. Looks like we're going to have to come up. Put a little oil in this thread. Go ahead and start it. Make sure it grabs correctly. Don't cross thread it. Put it right there. These are 17 millimeter bolts. This is the one I had a problem with. My socket wasn't deep enough. What I'm actually going to use to reinstall it is a 17 millimeter half-inch impact socket. And right here's your grounding cable. Don't forget that. Actually, I'll adjust this down first. This is actually the lock that holds the bracket down onto the engine mount. Oh yeah, that one has plenty of clearance. I'm going to run all these bolts down. 17 millimeter. Using a half-inch ratchet with a 17 millimeter impact socket. So I'm going to make this one snug, and I'll go around counterclockwise and tighten it this way. Okay, it's all good. Now I'll adjust this down. Make sure this is, you gotta feel it under here. Run that down. This is a 12 millimeter. I'm gonna have to hold it on the bottom while you tighten this up so it doesn't slip out of the way. Okay, that's tight. Double check. Make sure it's good on this side. Okay. Now install your grounding cable. 10 millimeter. Bring that back into place. And run this down. Okay, there you go. Okay, so that's all on. Take the floor jack out. Cool, floor jack is out, engine mount is on, top and lower cover is on. Now I'll put the valve cover on. I forgot to bring back this wiring harness, so go ahead, let's put that into place now. Don't forget about it. Slide that into there. And bring that there. There's a 10mm bolt that holds that in place. Okay, right here, just lead the belt with the alternator around the back side of the AC compressor and on the back side of the crankshaft pulley. And we'll tighten it up using the alternator. See, I'll leave the alternator off first. Bring on the AC compressor. Don't worry about it here on the top. Duh, might help if I took it off the adjusting nut. Okay, cool. That's on. Double check it. Alright, cool. Now we'll start putting the alternator back into place. We'll have to put the other belt on after we put the power steering pump back in. Alternator was the last piece I did. Put on the crank, AC compressor, and then over the alternator. Next thing you want to do is put the alternator back into place. Have the belt on, and need to tighten it up. So there's one here. There's two down on this side. The adjusting nut is right here. So let's install this thing. So go ahead and tighten this one up. It's on the back side closest to the engine. I don't think I needed to remove that one or loosen it up. Okay, that feels good. Let's tighten it righty-tighty. Part of the wiring harness, so go ahead and tighten this up. Let's get this started. Tighten it down. Okay, that's tight. Let's bring the power steering pump back in. This bolt goes right here. This is your adjuster bolt. The other one goes right here, so let's connect this one first. I'm going to put some little bit of oil on this one. Line this bad boy up. Trying to start it here. Sorry I can't get a shot of it, but I'm just trying to thread it through the bottom. I believe I got it. Okay, I'll start this one. Line that in straight. Start it by hand. Before going any further, I'm going to put the belt on. So let's put the belt on. Put that into place. And go around the crank. Put it on the bottom side, crank. Just a matter of getting it into place. So it's fitting correctly. I think it's a 12mm. So I'm going to hold that up. Come on the back side. You gotta get a wrench to tighten this thing up. So I'm just gonna make it snug. I'm not gonna tighten it all the way down yet. Okay, bring that online. Okay, lifting up. Making final adjustment. Tightening it down. Tighten this one up. Okay, cool. Bring the power steering hose. Make sure the O-ring's there. Slide that down into place. Bring your two bolts in, two 10mm. Okay. Tighten those up. Okay. Next thing you want to do is, in the four corners, they put RTV. So I'm cleaning out the old RTV. I'll put some new RTV in. So just wiping it clean. This is a super clean engine. Somebody's taking very good care of this engine. Someone loved this car and took care of it. Called their baby and tucked it in at night. Okay, cool. So now I will install the valve cover. Put a little RTV on the corners. When I say corners, I'm talking about, okay, when I'm talking about corners, I'm talking about these corners right here. And on the other side, as well as right here. So you put a little dribble of RTV there and there. One on the other side, basically on the opposite side of this, and the opposite side of that. So there'll be 4 spots where you put RTV. That's where you want to put it. There and over there. Got some RTV, just a little dab will do ya. Put on the back side here. Just a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot. And the back side right here. Okay, get the valve cover. Make sure all the gaskets are in place. And place it on down. Push those down. Start these by hand. Make sure they go in correctly. 5 of them. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4. And 5. Bring that line back in. This is finger tight. I can't do it that way. So let's get my handy dandy 1/4 inch 10mm. Tighten those bad boys down. Run them down by hand first. Okay, cool. Now do the final tightening. You don't have to be Superman on these. Just kind of go in a crisscross pattern. Go from here, 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 and then double check them. Okay, that one. Okay, all tight. Now install spark plugs. I like to use 3/8 hose, so you guys can see that, about, I don't know, 5 inches. And what I do is I start the spark plugs this way. So now you can drop them in there and then start them with a socket. That just doesn't feel right to me for whatever reason. So what I will do is I will put oil on the threads of the spark plugs. You could use anti-seize if you really wanted to. But anti-seize is more for dissimilar metals, not necessarily aluminum into aluminum. So I use the oil on the threads. Rub it around. Get it in there. Go ahead and stick the porcelain part, into the hose, and start it that way. You can actually feel when it starts. And then I do my final tightening with a 5/8 spark plug socket. This just helps ensure that you don't cross thread the spark plugs into the head, because you don't want that. You really don't want that, trust me. It's no fun. It's going to cost a lot of money. So I'll tighten these down. What I like to do is tighten the spark plugs down until it bottoms out and you can't move it, and then do like a 1/4 more and you're done. So that's tight. Right about there. That's all you gotta do. You don't have to He-Man power these things, Iron Man lift these things. Right there. You can actually feel it when when it really wants to stop. It wants to stop on its own. Don't force it past that mark. That point. Right there. Right there. Okay, cool. this one in. This is a holder for the spark plugs, spark plug wires. Okay, let's tighten those down. Okay, cool. Now put the oil dipstick back in, and the dipstick itself. One thing I forgot to do was install the dipstick tube, so that was kind of a hassle. So remember to install the dipstick tube before you install the power steering pump. Okay, everything's buttoned up. Spark plugs are in, wires are in. I'm going to put some coolant in it, fire it up. As far as coolant, this is blue Honda coolant, Type 2 coolant. It's an ethanol glycol based coolant. I think Honda wanted $20 a gallon for it. So I'm going to fill up the radiator as much as possible. And then I will fill up the reservoir as much as possible. I'm going to use the same coolant that I pulled out. There's nothing wrong with the coolant that I pulled out. Looks relatively good. Plus the owner didn't give me any money to buy coolant, and I don't have any blue coolant. So let's pour it back in. Okay, the radiator is not going to take a whole lot. The engine needs to warm up to actually circulate the coolant because the thermostat needs to open. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this, I'm going to pour the rest of this into the reservoir bottle, and as time passes it should be sucked into the engine. I'm going to let him drive it for several hundred miles, actually probably 100, 50 to 100. We'll go from there. Okay, here's a moment of truth. Coolant is in the radiator. I reused the same stuff. Filled it up as much as I could in the radiator. And once that was full, or once it was overfilling, I filled up the reservoir bottle. It needs to heat up and cycle through a couple times with a thermostat. So I'm going to fire it up right now. And here's the moment of truth. I actually had to replace the alternator in this vehicle. I went and got a rebuilt one. So I had to replace the alternator. The bearing was bad. That's why you heard that noise. It was going out. I think it's only been changed out maybe once before. Probably under warranty. So let's fire this thing up and make sure it's ready to rock and roll. What you see burning off there is power steering fluid. That's how you do a timing belt on a 2.3 liter Honda. Questions, comments, concerns, you can email me at bundysgarage@gmail.com. If this video has helped you out, please subscribe to my channel. I'll keep coming out with DIY repair videos for you guys, and like always, I'll keep them rolling for you.
Take care of it.